Good afternoon, Dr. Brian Peters. Back for another exciting episode. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Great. So let's just get right into this. As people know by now who've been following us and listening to us, we are talking about workplace engagement and productivity from the scientific viewpoint, because both of us think that the whole subject of talking about engagement has been pretty fluffy so far in the past in a lot of places. And so we are trying to make it as scientific and specific and as non-fluffy as we can. So we've given, a couple of introductory podcasts just on what is engagement, just beyond this fluffy, airy sense. So I'd like to have a friend at work. No, it means that you are actually engaged with the job. Your mind is engaged with the job because you know what your job is, and you are trying to do the best that you can to meet the expectations that people have of you. So your brain is actually engaged with your job. And you know what other people do, and you know how you're supposed to support them. So all of you are engaged with one another. You're trying to think and operate as one. So as we have established, if we could have a simple operational definition of engagement, is that you are engaged with your job, you know what your job is supposed to be, and you know what other people's are supposed to be doing, and you are trying to work together as a team with maximum efficiency and maximum productivity. That's a pretty short but good operational definition of engagement, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So when the rubber meets the road. So now that we've talked about the idea that leadership is extremely important, communication is extremely important, and freedom and autonomy are extremely important, have been some of the topics that we covered in the beginning as our framework. Leadership is important because we're not that big on leadership styles. We're bigger on leadership behaviors. Like, how do your leaderships behave in things that you can see? Are they telling you what you need to know? Are they treating you with respect when they open their mouth and say things? Are they showing you what you need to be shown? Are they teaching you what you need to be taught? Because that's leadership. What are their actions? Not what they're thinking, what their style is, but what they're actually doing. Communication, how are they communicating it? Are they communicating it once a year, every day? Are they spending enough time to tell you what you need to know to do a better job, giving you the information that you need and following up to see if you need anything else? And are you telling them what it is that they need to know about what you need? Communication. And then collaboration. Everyone needs to collaborate, and once people are in a collaborating mode, they don't need any micromanagement. I mean, once people have been educated and you have talked to them and they said, I'm good to go, you can't be breathing down their neck. All right. So I think those are the three things that we talked about. A, B, and C are our foundations. Leadership is important. Communication is important. A certain amount of autonomy and collaboration once you're ready to rock and roll, that's important. Having said that, we're now moving into our hardcore installments where we're talking about the areas of knowledge and the metrics and the data that need to be taught and gathered so that you can tell whether you are operating in an effective and engaged way or not. And all of this ultimately drills down to organizational knowledge. What people know about the organization that they're in and the job that they're in, right? And this is where it becomes hardcore, and hardcore definitions and hardcore teaching and instruction needs to occur, or you're not going to get anywhere, right? So some of the three biggest words that I can think of when you start to build a real machine for better engagement are what, why, and how. Three pretty important questions. People need to know what they are supposed to be doing, why they are supposed to be doing it that way and not another way, and how specifically they will be doing it as part of a process with no loose definitions in the how part, but as much specificity as possible.
Mm-hmm.
As we've discussed before, we have our own engagement analytics software platform called Engagement View. And in Engagement View, we are asking questions that other engagement surveys don't ask. It's more of a organizational forensics tool, and we are trying to find out what level of knowledge that people have about the job that they're in and their level of knowledge about the organization that they are working in. And we're going to dig in for a number of installments into the really tough questions that we're asking around what, why, and how. Those are the same questions, again, that we are asking in our own software tool because people have to know. You have to have an idea of what people know and don't know about the business that you're in. And as we've discussed many times, if we wander into a room as consultants and begin to ask people, what exactly do you do and what are the key performance indicators of the job that you are in? Like, what business levers are you impacting the most? Many times people don't know. That's bad. If you ask people many times, why are you doing your job this way? You don't always get a clear definition. That's bad.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask people how they are doing their job and how they are supporting others, many times you don't get a clear definition. Then if you move into the team and you have the whole team there and you say, do you people on different teams understand what other people in this room are doing, what they're doing, why they're doing it that way, and how they're doing it? Again, pretty gloopy answers a lot of the time. That is the opposite of engagement. If we can go into a room and everyone has a pretty good idea of what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what business levers they're impacting the most, and what their colleagues are supposed to be doing, and how they are impacting business levers, and how they have committed to supporting one another, you're going to have an incredibly dynamic and productive business. But the fact of the matter is, in most organizations today, teams are not anywhere close to being at the level that they could be. I mean, I think we can agree with that. I mean, you've been researching this for a long time. I mean, you've been in the corporate world, you've run and managed teams, and now you have your doctorate in engagement. So having said all of what I have said, which is kind of encapsulates what we've talked about before, where do you want to start? Like, what do you think is the most important topic that people need to start thinking about first if they really want to increase institutional knowledge? Of all of the things we've just talked about, what would be the first thing you would get people in an organization to do when you're brought in as a consultant, which you have been, and people say, help us? Where do you usually start in your effort and quest to improve that institutional knowledge so you're actually building teams that know what one another do?
I think we've talked about similar things or I think there's a theme throughout what we've discussed in different episodes, which is kind of starting at the top. Like, does the organization even understand like what they do, what the purpose is, what the vision is? I remember, and I feel like we might have talked about this before, but I'll bring it up again. I remember talking with somebody who has, run teams, been parts of organizations, and when we talk about business, he says, "Well, the purpose of every business is to make money." And like that's the only goal, right? Is just to make money, which is a very like capitalistic viewpoint, and to me, oversimplification. There's a good book, Good to Great, that just talks about taking good companies and making them great companies. And he kind of talks about making money as just like a byproduct of being a great company, right? Like if you're like that's not the goal, but that is I guess the blood. Like you need the money to be able to do great things, right? You need to be able to sustain the business and hire people and all of that. But your goal is not necessarily to make money. You have a greater purpose than that in the organization. So when I talk with organizations, try to see, do they even understand what is our purpose? Like, what are we here to do? And what is our like long-term vision for this? Where are we going to be? Where do we want to go in the 1, 3, 5, 10 years? Like what is that vision? Because then once we understand, okay, what is the purpose? Like what are we here to do? Where do we want to go? We can start seeing, okay, do all the other things align with that, right? Do we have the KPIs that are correct? Do we, do people understand, what our vision is and what we do? How do we build our job descriptions to center around the purpose of this organization and where they fit in that? Like, how do we design that? But if you don't know like what you're here to do and where you're going, it's really hard to have anybody understand their role within the organization, how they fit in, because at the top level, you don't even understand. So it ends up being kind of chaotic. That's been my experience. But I've also worked mostly as like an internal consultant, right? Like I've been in HR, run companies, and so I've been more of the HR advising people inside. I'm curious your thoughts. I mean, you've done a lot of external consulting, right? You've worked with a bunch of different organizations. What have you done? Like when you go in, where's your first step?
Well, I think it's all about the job. I think it's analyzing, and this is what our software platform does, right? We get the teams, the people in the organization, to tell us what they think the competencies are that are needed in specific jobs. And we ask them where the company is falling short on skill sets and competencies that are needed to do the job. We just ask them, and they tell us. These are huge, important things to know. So if, first of all, people need to do what you do, you write a great job description, by the way. So, we have actually shown some of your job descriptions on one of, the projects that we're currently working on to our industrial psychology team. And they said, this guy writes a great job description. He makes it really easy for us to build competency models, in the project that we're working on. It's very easy for us to build a competency model for hiring for this job because we can get it straight from his job descriptions. So I would say people need to be like Dr. Brian Peters, and they need to write a great job description saying, these are the competencies that we need for this specific job and the things that people do that can be measured, which you're really good at that. So I would say, hire Brian Peters to come in there and teach you to write a good job description and say, these are the things that you need to be able to do in the job that can be measured. And you're really good at that. So that needs to be done with all of the jobs. People need to write great job descriptions. And so they can tell people, when you come in, this is what we are expecting you to do, and just no ifs, ands, or buts. We call the things that we are expecting people to do that move business levers competencies,
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people try and make the word more complicated than it actually is. It's basically, are you competent to do the job? I mean, do you know the things that people need to know and have the certain aptitudes and the personality traits, all of these things that we know people have that are really great at a particular job? And you need to do that. But first of all, you need to sit down as a leader or a manager and think, what are those things? And then if you do either do it yourself or work with your HR a manager to figure out a job description that will let people know what it is that you are expecting. I think that gets you to the 50-yard line, and most people don't have that. It is extremely important. And I'll give an example. You talk about the Jim Collins book, Good to Great, which you referenced earlier. How do you go from good to great? Well, you hire people who are not just good, who show that they're not just good at what is expected, but they have proven themselves to be great. And they score great on all of the attributes that we know are associated with high performers in jobs like that. A great example is the world of sales. We know some of the competencies and traits that pertain to all great salespeople. They're extremely optimistic. They're extremely resilient. They can get hit by a truck and they'll get up and keep running. They're not easily knocked down. They're very assertive people, but they're assertive in a friendly way. So they're assertive, but they're not arrogant. They're assertive in a friendly way. And most importantly, they are wired for follow up because follow up is the most important thing in sales. If you will ask a high performing salesperson, what's the most important thing that you think a high performing salesperson has, they can answer you just like that. They won't stall. They'll tell you. They'll say, well, follow up is king. I usually like to follow up with people as soon as humanly possible. And if someone asks me for a proposal, I don't wait till the end of the week. I try and get it to them the next day, by the end of the day, if possible, if I can do it. Like, I don't waste any time. They tell you that immediately. And they say, you got to be resilient. You got to be able to take the knocks, and above and beyond everything else, you really should have a pretty fierce desire to prove yourself every day. They'll say it. And lo and behold, those are the actual traits of high-performing salespeople who are great, who score great, not good. And guess what? People who score great on competency tests of high-performing salespeople bring in 3 times more revenue than those who score good. So I think that that's a pretty huge insight. And I think that companies need to get really serious about looking at job descriptions and then trying to figure out a way to hire people who've already proven that they are good at, and not just good, but they're great at the things that you're looking for. I know that you know this, so I'm going to toss the ball back to you. What do you do in the current seat that you're in, which is a very important seat, to make sure that you write the job descriptions that will attract and find the people that really are great at doing this type of job and not just good? How do you do it? Because I know you've done it before.
Yeah, well, so I'll answer that, but I do want to just throw it back to you really quick. So not that we need a ping pong here, but because I am just curious your thoughts. So because I agree with everything you said, job descriptions are incredibly important. It's one of the most overlooked things that I see. I'm actually consulting for a friend's company, very small company. He's actually looking at hiring roles, and when I ask, like, do you have job description? He doesn't. So then I'm like, okay, well, how do you know what you're looking for? So I'm helping him kind of develop those job descriptions. But we often hire people, and I see this even at bigger organizations. We hire people before we've even developed a job description. It's like, well, what is this person doing, and how do they know what good looks like? How do you hire for that role when you don't even have a baseline of what they're supposed to be doing? You might intuitively know, but like, but you kind of need to put that down and make sure you kind of flush that out, right? Make sure it is exactly what you need. So all of that to say, I agree with you, and I'll talk in a minute about the job descriptions. But I'm curious because, I mentioned, when I go in, I want to look at, the purpose and where the vision is and all of that. And I think you're spot on with the importance of job descriptions. When you've gone into companies, I guess one, do they seem to always understand the kind of the purpose and the vision where it's going already? Do you think that matters before you do job descriptions, or can we jump into job descriptions without having a good without understanding, I guess, the purpose of the organization and where it's going? What's your thought?
Absolutely not. Brian, absolutely not. I mean, come on, you have a doctorate. You already know the answer, man. You're just punking me. Of course, you have to get people in a room and say, okay, explain to me why the company, what you're doing, and why you're doing it that way, and why it's better than any of your competitors, and how do the people in the room fit in? Okay, we know the answer. A lot of times, these are good questions. I don't think we put these in writing. Then you turn to the CEO or the top brass and you say, I think you need them in writing like by the end of the week or tomorrow. You can. I mean, that's the main problem, right? They need to articulate it. So then once you have got everybody to articulate, this is what we do and why we're doing it, why we're better than the competition, and everyone understands, and you say, we need to take this down to the floor. We need to make sure that everyone in every job understands. So who's responsible for these jobs? I am. Okay, so do you have a job description that describes what it is that you expect of everybody on your team to do and what you're going to hold them accountable for that can be measured? Kind of, not really. Well, you need to talk to Dr. Brian Peters. I mean, that's a really horrible answer. So after you've done the first thing, then you move to the second one, which is ask the managers who now know that they need to be able to articulate what the vision is and what they're doing for a living, that for all the people that are reporting to them, they need to have or write or be involved in job descriptions to let those people know what they're being held accountable for. I mean, that's part of the answer. Does that answer your question so far?
Yeah, I think so. So, and I'm glad that because yes, I mean, I believe that too. And I just, again, asking you because it sounds like we're aligned and that we agree. But, again, you've gone into lots of different companies. So perhaps, you had different experiences, right? But I think we're both aligned. So if we just say, okay, let's say we've gotten through the first part, we've established, hey, this is the purpose of the organization, this is where the organization's going. So now we're in a place where we can start talking job descriptions, right? And looking at how these fit into the greater company. I like to partner with the leadership that's going to be managing these people to understand like what is ideal, like what is the day to day, what does sort of good look like, what is your ideal for this position, so that we can start getting duties and responsibilities. So just going through, and again, it can just be either a whiteboard effort or I try not to start from scratch. If I understand the role, kind of what they're looking for, like I've had some experience with that, or maybe I'll use some AI tools to kind of help me brainstorm some roles. So we're not starting from scratch. So the company that I told you that I'm helping support, they're looking to bring on a full-time like admin assistant or like executive administrator or admin. So they don't have anything yet. They have some thoughts of what they would want, but I just put a list together of potential duties and responsibilities so that they're not starting from scratch necessarily, to just get the brain thinking, okay, oh yeah, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, right? And start looking through that. Sometimes if you have old job descriptions that might not be up to snuff, I'll take those first and say, okay, so this is our baseline, and let's make it better. What I really like then doing is once we have the duties and responsibilities, looking at KPIs. So what I try to do is say, okay, what are the organization's KPIs? What's at the top? What makes success at the top? And then based on each role, we can say, okay, what are the KPIs that will contribute to that top number? So they're not necessarily the same thing, right? They're not necessarily the same KPI, but they are going to contribute to the organization meeting that. And so I try to give everybody at least one number. I say typically no more than 5. So 3 to 5 is sort of my magic, where I like to be for KPIs. If we can't do 3, if you feel like, okay, the position's so junior, whatever, everybody should have one number. And I've actually gotten into arguments with leaders about this who be like, I don't know, I don't even have one. Everybody can have one number. You should be able to do 3 to 5, but if that's too difficult in the moment, let's at least get one down and we can iterate off of that. It's not impossible for everybody to have one number. Let's do that. Let's think about it. But we need to be able to track how that flows up to the organizational KPI. So what is, if they meet this or exceed this number, how does that benefit us downstream? Whether that's other departments' KPIs, but eventually it should all go up to the organizational one, right? And so I look at the top and then I try to figure out how do the rest fit into that. And it's a conversation with leadership, and it's a lot of brainstorming. I'll take their ideas, come back, start, putting things together, have them look at what I've developed. We'll talk about it some more. The last time I reviewed, a significant amount of KPIs job descriptions, probably took me 6 to 8 weeks to really get it all like buttoned up, because it's not in my experience, it's not a one-day session type of thing. It's a lot of conversations back and forth and refining them. And even then, you should review them. I argue annually to make sure that the KPIs and the job still make sense, right? Are those still the same duties and responsibilities? Because as an organization grows and develops, the KPIs might shift a little bit. The duties and responsibilities might shift a little bit. So let's review and make sure that these still make sense, and then launch those out, to the team.
So Brian, I think we need to wrap this one up because we have a lot more to talk about and we can't go on to an hour and a half. So we're going to try to keep this one compact and talk about the key takeaway that you just talked about. Every manager eventually needs to go to everybody that reports to them and say, okay, we need to understand and get some real clarity on the 3 things that you're being held accountable for that are important business drivers at this company that impact whether we make more revenue or lose revenue, or decrease costs or increase costs. So what are those 3 things? What are those 3 to 5 things? Do you understand it? I'd like to talk to you about it to see if we're on the same page. It's going to take some work on the part of the manager before they even walk in to talk to the employee. And then the employee should have the opportunity to say, yeah, and I also think I'm impacting, to which the manager says, well, great, good for you. That's a good point. I'm going to write that down. And do you need any more training in these areas? So just so everyone can understand it, like Denzel Washington says in the Philadelphia story, I think it was called, like, explain this to me like I'm a 2-year-old. Explain it to me like I'm a 2-year-old. Give me 3 jobs and 3 accountabilities attached to those jobs that you already know of that will serve as good examples of things that managers should do when they sit and think about it and write down 3 accountabilities on a sheet of paper that they can then go in and discuss with their employees. Just give me 3. 3 jobs and 3 accountabilities attached to them.
3 for each job, or just
3 jobs, okay. 3 accountabilities
for each job?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I think the first step is, again, they need to understand what the organizational KPIs are. So let's take, for example, when I used to run a corporate gifting company. We had a bakery. We made cookies and other products. So if you are in the bakery, the way you're not driving revenue like a salesperson is, but you contribute to how much revenue we can make, right? How many products we can ship. So one of the things that you could sit down and look at is, okay, so if our goal, if our one of our KPIs is a certain amount of inventory level at the organizational level and a certain amount of revenue, what is your daily output or even hourly output, right? So of, let's say, cookies, for example. So you set, okay, each person needs to be able to make 1,000 cookies per day, right? Let's just say. So I'm going to go ahead and measure their output, make sure that we're doing that. We also need to be cognizant of costs. So let's track waste, right? And have a number of, we want to be less than 5% waste, right? So because waste, the more waste we have, the higher cost per cookie, right? Because it's pretty simple math. We have so many ingredients going into that. We want to be able to put X number of ingredients and have Y output of cookies, and that includes wrappers and stuff like that. So the more waste we have, the more cost per unit goes up, right? So we want to keep that low. So we want to have low waste. Another thing that you could look at for an individual could be, inventory accuracy, right? If everybody's responsible for inventory, because again, the more accurate you are with your inventory, you can reduce costs, you can manage cash flow better because you're not overbuying ingredients. You're making sure you're leveraging your inventory appropriately, because again, that has downstream cost effects.
Let me cut in really fast. You just mentioned a competency. You said accuracy. You said attention to detail and accuracy. Those are competencies, Dr. Peters. Attention to detail and accuracy, a desire to be accurate. You can assess for those things.
Yep.
You can ask people to prove that in the past they have a reputation for accuracy and attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty important thing to ask of people when you're hiring in jobs that impact what you said. Reducing cost, attention to detail, accuracy, a desire to be accurate. You can assess for those. Just want to point that out. Those are competencies. They need to be added to the job description. And when you're interviewing people, you need to ask them to prove how you showed a desire for accuracy and attention to detail in explicit detail in your last job. Okay, so keep on going.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So let's take, again, customer service would be another area that is big and that you can put some KPIs around. So you can look at the customer satisfaction with the help that they receive, right? If you do customer satisfaction surveys, you can start to measure and have a benchmark that you're expecting that they have. The number of calls or tickets or whatever the system is that are answered, right? Because you need to make sure you're getting back to people, that you're processing all of these complaints, concerns, whatever. And then you could also look at, depending on your system, timeliness, right? Like if we're getting emails or tickets or answering calls or whatever, how quickly are we getting to those things? Are you meeting your SLAs, right? Are you meeting those standards? So it depends on the organization, right? But if you have a customer service that is responding to emails, are they responding within whatever you set, whether that is 24 hours, 48 hours, an hour, whatever, like how, what is their time to respond to those? So those are three things that you could measure that ultimately will likely lead to customer retention, right? If you treat the customers better, if you're answering their questions, if you're responding to them in a timely manner, those things should have downstream effects with customer retention, which have downstream effects to revenue, right?
Okay, so you just mentioned two more extremely important competencies, punctuality and sense of urgency. If the job needs them and you don't have them, that's deadly. And it, everybody knows it. It's two of those things that make you go, uh-oh. So certain jobs that, are really important and that impact costs, whether you decrease it or increase it, require an intense high score for sense of urgency and punctuality. Just think about it. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. So many jobs require that. Brian, you can assess people and you can talk to people. I am really big on validated assessments to get that sense of urgency and punctuality for a lot of jobs too, and then asking questions around that. Because lack of those traits in certain jobs across departments, it can cost you millions of dollars a year, right? We've seen that. So if you have to admit, and people should be very cognizant of this, and this ties back into the job description and then holding people's feet to the fire when you're asking about these accountabilities that require sense of urgency and punctuality, holding their feet to the fire and saying, we're not kidding. So tell me how you did that in the past, where you displayed a sense of urgency and punctuality. Because in today's hiring culture, a lot of people just say, well, I don't really like people breathing down my neck. I like to kind of come in on a flex schedule, kind of like to work a flex schedule just as flexible as it can be and just kind of do things in my own time, whatever. And you're like, that's cool and that's great and everything, but not for this job. You just need to tell the truth. Right. Okay. So keep on going.
Yeah, and so I think another one that I've managed people on is like fulfillment. Again, I worked for Amazon for a little while, so I saw what they do for fulfillment, which I will say can be a bit extreme. They're pretty tough with that stuff. I've also managed fulfillment employees in the company I was talking about before. So if you look at a fulfillment associate, that's getting packages out to people. So you look at, again, similar to the bakery, where you're going to look at output, right? Like how many packages are they fulfilling a day? That matters because, especially if you've committed to your customers, hey, you're going to we ship this within 24 hours or whatever. You need to be able to measure, are we getting those packages out? Because that will also tell you if you hit these numbers and you're able to hit the requirements that you need, you can also then scale up from there. So if everybody can do, again, we'll just say 1,000 packages a day, which is too much. But if you did 1,000 packages a day, I know as I grow how many people that I need to be able to hit that. But then I need everybody to hit those numbers, or else we're going to get behind. So that's important. Order accuracy, right? Like how many returns are we getting or complaints are we getting from wrong orders? That's a fulfillment metric. I mean, fulfillment has, as long as the order went in correctly, like fulfillment needs to make sure that they are monitoring that and they're doing it. They're sending them out accurate. So yes, they need to worry about their speed, but they also need to worry about their accuracy. So they need to balance the two of those. And then I would argue again.
Let me ask
Yeah.
you on that. I think this may be a good stopping point because we have a lot more stuff to talk about in this area. So why don't we just stop here, because you've mentioned something that's a classic example of something going wrong in either training or hiring, when your customer experience with order fulfillment, or your company experience and customer experience, is not where it should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you, in your opinion, we have hiring practices and we have training. In a company where we're trying to improve, performance, we have improving hiring and improving training, or development. Hiring, development, hiring, development. Those are the two buttons, right? In your opinion, when you look at companies where they're like, man, our fulfillment stinks, do you think that most of the time that is because of an assessment or a hiring flaw, where they're hiring too many people who just really don't have a sense of urgency and don't understand the need to step it up and care more about doing whatever needs to be done to get the orders out? Or do you think it's more of a training issue when you did hire the right people, but you haven't shown them how to do the order fulfillment in a way that meets expectations? So if you only could pick one in your experience, is it usually mostly a hiring flaw, where you haven't really examined whether people care about fulfillment and a sense of urgency, or is it usually more of a training problem? Which of the two? After we get your opinion, we're going to end there and come back next time where we're going to do some more screaming.
I hate that you're making me pick one because I don't like it. But if I had to only pick one, I would say hiring. I mean, most hiring practices are just not great. We don't assess talent the right way in a lot of organizations. And so I would say hiring. Yeah, if you're only picking one, if you're like, hey, I'm not ever going to train people, yeah, you absolutely, I mean, hiring. And also, if you hire the right people, the need for development in that role and training in that role is a little bit less, right? You have people that already have a good foundation. Yeah, well, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, I would say hiring is the number one, but what do you think?
Absolutely hiring.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you absolutely have to put hiring first, because once you have the right, raw material, then you can train.
Mm-hmm. But it's much easier, right, to train once you have that.
It's easier to train once you have the raw material. But if the people really they don't care. So I don't care if the person gets their package on time or not. I mean, there's no training program in the world that can fix that. If they do have a desire and they're like, man, I wish I could just be better at this. If someone could show me how to use a different technique or process, you can work with that. But if the person doesn't care, you can't. So hiring, from a competency standpoint, competency tells you the most competency assessment tests which we offer, validated competency assessment test, tell me the most important thing that I want to know about a candidate. Do they care about the expectations of this particular job? Is it for them? Do they care? If their answer is sort of, see you later. Now, with that being said, I hope you have a great rest of the day, but let's hop off now that everybody's had something to chew on and realizes the importance of hiring and realizes the importance of doing our KPIs. Let's come back next time and talk about what I would like to call crazy town. The number of times I've walked into an organization and tried to ask really simple questions like, hey, so what are you guys doing and why do you do it that way? And immediately everyone goes into defensive posture and won't answer any questions. And I'm like, okay, did I say something wrong? So that's what we're going to do next time. Goodbye, everybody. Really enjoyed talking to you about the future of engagement. And we're going to be back soon with Welcome to Crazy Town. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah, it's great talking with you.
Hasta luego.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for checking out this episode of the Science of Engagement podcast. Let's keep the conversation going down in the comments. If you like this episode, please hit the like button and be sure to hit subscribe to stay up to date on the science of keeping your people engaged without the fluff. See you in the next one.